Welcome to another knitting tutorial where I will show you how to make this beautiful double headband with a twist and a seam in the back. It's a really simple stitch which will allow you to knit both of the layers at once, but it's really easy to follow, so even beginners can give it a try. So for this tutorial you're going to need yarn. I chose from YarnArt Pacific Chunky in this beautiful color. You can decide just to use one colored yarn, but I really like the pattern that it makes with the color changes. Then you need 5mm knitting needles. I'm using circular ones, but you can use straight ones as well because we won't be knitting in a round, so it's really up to you. For me, it's just a little bit more comfortable using the circular ones. Then you need a tapestry needle and a pair of scissors. So at the beginning, we'll be doing a long tail cast on, so you need to leave a longer tail at the end, about 1 meter long, and then we'll start with a slip knot. So you cross the yarn like this and pull it through the bottom. And it's called a slip knot because it should be possible to pull at the end and make it smaller. This yarn is quite thin. I will be casting onto both needles at the same time, so just insert both of your needles inside the loop and tighten it. And then we will be casting on both of them, and at the end pull one of the needles out. Cast on, wrap the yarn that is connected to the ball of yarn around your thumb and the long tail around your index finger, and as shown here, go around over the one on the index finger and back into the loop on the thumb. So around the bottom yarn on the thumb, around the index finger, and pull tight. And I made 34 stitches altogether. You can choose more if you'd like to make the headband wider, but remember it has to be an even number. I'm finished with casting on 34 stitches onto both of my needles, and now I just hold one of the needles and pull the other one out and stretch out the stitches a bit. Now we can turn our work and let's get started with the first row. So for the first stitch, we're going to knit, then put your yarn in front and slip stitch the next one, and put your yarn back, and again knit. And you will be altering these two all across the row. So always put the yarn in front, slip stitch, put the yarn in the back, insert needle, and knit. And this will allow you to create both layers of the headband, so you don't have to make each of them separately and then sew them together, but you will be knitting both of the layers at the same time, which is really nice. At the same time, because you are knitting both of the layers, it does take a little bit longer for this pattern to build up. So especially if you're a beginner, you will need a little bit more patience for this project. It is a simple pattern though, so I'm sure beginners can manage it, but just keep in mind that it does take a little bit longer to make. Okay, and then we just slip the last stitch and turn the work around. And in the next row, in the second row here, we're going to be continuing in the exact same pattern. So again, knit, and slip stitch with yarn in front, and again knit, slip stitch with yarn in front. So this is the pattern you will be following along until your headband is the length you'd like it to be. You can measure it around your head so that it fits nicely. Make sure it's not too tight or too loose. And at the beginning of each row, start with a knit, and at the very last end of the row you will be slipping the last stitch. So continue in this pattern, and I will meet you when the headband is long enough, and I will show you how to finish it and finish the seams. Here's my finished headband. As you can see, it made this lovely pattern thanks to the yarn I chose, and it created the two layers at the same time. So if you have a thinner yarn, it's great because it's a little bit warmer this way. So now we need to cast off. For casting off, we're going to knit the first 2 stitches. Then take the back stitch and pull it over the front stitch and drop it off the needle. So now you have 1 stitch on your right needle. Then again knit 1 and repeat. Take the back stitch, pull it over and drop from the needle. And you will continue this again across the whole row, and it will allow you to close your work. So always knit 1 and then pull back stitch over front stitch, drop off needle, and this is how we cast off. Finished casting off, and I have the very last stitch there. Now I'm going to cut my yarn. I'm leaving a little bit longer tail so that I can use it for sewing the seam together. And then I just pull out the very last stitch and tighten it. So now all we need to do is sew the ends together. Before that, don't forget to twist the headband so that you have the twist in the front. And then in the back, we're going to sew the ends. So take your tapestry needle and for the seam I'm going to be using a mattress stitch, which means that when you take a look at your work, I will be going underneath the V's from the stitches on one side, and then again underneath the yarn from the same stitch on the other side. Now it can be a little bit harder to see where exactly that stitch is on the other side, but you go underneath both of the legs of the stitch. And this is basically it. You will be going back and forth and pulling it tight. As you go along, make sure you keep measuring the ends so that you know you are sewing them correctly together and you don't have one end longer than the other when you're finished. And at the very end, I like to make a knot so that it's a little bit stronger, and then I just weave in the ends by going through the seam one way and then the other and cut the yarn. And then the very last thing is to weave in the long end that you have from the beginning of your knitting. Again, I'm going to weave it into the stitch by going in one way and then the other back. Once you're finished weaving in your ends, you can cut the yarn, and that's it, your headband is finished. So here's the seam from the outside. This is what it looks like from the front with the twist. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn how to make more projects like this in the future. Thanks for watching.